Speaking of inspiration, I wanted to share a little bit, kind of the rest of the story on how this day came to be. It happened in the San Bernardino Middle School library on February 25th. It was a small in attendance but powerful in focal point because we had an incredible presenter, Ashley Powers Clark, there to talk to us about asset development for youth. Well, she had us coalesce around some ideas, and she had us step outside our comfort zones, and we started extending ourselves to other communities. What a novel idea, cross-pollination of ideas, what we want to have happen today. And as I spoke with members of the Chular School District Board, Rosa Manriquez turned to me and said, wouldn't it be incredible if we could do this county-wide, if we could train all of our districts in this asset development for youth, building resiliency skills for young people. That was the moment the seed was planted for this summit. Because I looked at her and I said, I think that's doable. I think we can do that. And then I came back to my board and I said, I think we should do this. And our board, Harvey's looking like, oh God, here she goes again, said, I think we can do this. Let's set this as a goal. And Dr. Katowski said, well, we'll line up our staff, and I got regular calls from Deneen. How are we coming? Are you going to give a report? Not yet, not ready yet, not ready yet. Anyway, it was a novel idea to bring 24 districts together, 2 community college districts, but it was Ashley Powers Clark that made me think, we gotta do this. If we could create resiliency throughout our county, and if a child had to move from district to district, no matter what, with that safety net in place, there's commonality across county lines, we can be the #1 district in the state of California. And I firmly believe that's gonna happen, and I think it's gonna happen through all the leadership that you exude today in this room. So, without further ado, it's my great pleasure to introduce Ashley Powers Clark. And Ashley, to give you just a brief background, because I don't want to take up her time, she's our star at Monterey County Office of Education, as we just recently stole her from a community that she can talk about different positions throughout the community. But she's been a health prevention coordinator. She's developed partnerships in service learning projects. She's been the community impact coordinator for the United Way, and as well as serving as the coordinator for the Children's Council. She holds a master's from Community and Youth Development at UC Davis. She helped coordinate the Center for Regional Change. We're delighted to have Ashley here with us. She's going to introduce her team. Please join me in a hearty welcome for Ashley Powers Clark, a real star.
Oh, got it, great. Hi, everybody. So I'm Ashley Powers Clark, and I'm the Health and Prevention Coordinator at the Monterey County Office of Education. And like Judy said, part of the inspiration for this summit was a training that we had the opportunity to do at the San Bernardino Middle School. And what it looked like from my end was I was sitting in my office at United Way, and the phone rings, and Judy's on the phone. She said, Ashley, you know, that's a really great training you did. Could you do it again? And I was like, yeah, absolutely, we could totally do it again. And then she said, could you do it again with 100 people at Spanish Bay? And I went, absolutely. And I hung up the phone and literally just had this moment where I went, what did I just get myself into? And at that moment, that's when I called the Youth Development Network of Sacramento, who's been absolutely instrumental in helping us move this work forward here in Monterey County. So I'd like to introduce you to Adrian Ruiz, who's the Executive Director of the Youth Development Network, who will be co-presenting with us today. His organization has done amazing work throughout the country, helping to improve communities for youth.
Yep. So. Hi. Good morning. I'm Adrian Ruiz. All I have to say is that whenever you need the Youth Development Network in Monterey, like, no problem. I mean, you live in the most beautiful place in Sacramento, I mean, in the state that I've ever seen. So I'm driving from Sacramento down here, and it just keeps getting more beautiful and more beautiful and more beautiful. So I know you probably take it for granted, but Wow, seriously. The other thing that I want to say is that the Youth Development Network is in the business of optimizing school climates and student engagement. And when you leave here today or leave in the next 45 minutes to the other workshops, we'll give you 5 critical themes to school climate and student engagement that you'll need to take with you. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, great. You want to introduce Carrie?
Okay. Oh, yeah. So our work, I'm still stuck on the view. The amazing part of our work is that our work doesn't happen without strong leadership, and our work doesn't happen without principals at the school site saying, yes, we get it. We need an amazing curriculum to teach our young people, and we're going to give them a world-class curriculum. But what we have found out is that when we work with principals and administrators who understand that school climate is just as important, and the conditions that we have in our school for our young people to learn in, that's when our work really takes off. And a big part of our success in the Sacramento region actually happened in a town called Woodland, Pioneer High School, where Carrie Callahan was the principal, is the principal still, and is doing amazing work. And she'll be sharing more of her story later on.
Good morning. I won't take time to introduce myself in more detail other than to say I'm very happy to be here and hope to see some of you in the breakout session later where I have an opportunity to share some more stuff.
All right, fantastic. So to get started today, we just want to take a moment to kind of put the context on our presentation. So as we sit here in this room today, some of the most fundamental changes in our educational system over the past 40 years are taking place as we speak. So the local control funding formula and the local control accountability plan represent the sort of core of these reforms. And what sits at the core of the local control funding formula was very eloquently summarized by Jack O'Connell when he said, equal treatment of children in unequal situations is not justice. So the local control funding formula is really going to help us address the issues of fund distribution to schools by getting funds to schools that really need them. But we know if we want to overhaul our education system, we have to do more than just redistribute funds. So the local control accountability plan sets in place a series of 8 different priorities that all of our school districts need to start thinking about. So as the ground is kind of shifting beneath our feet, we can use these 8 state priorities as a way to start framing our conversations. So every conversation that we have will start linking back to these 8 categories. And today, we are going to focus on one of these categories. There we go, school climate. So school climate is something that's gaining sort of a lot of popularity these days, and we want to focus on school climate for a few reasons in particular. One, if we want to increase student engagement, we need to focus on school climate. 2, if we want to increase student achievement, we need to focus on improving our school climates. If we want parents to get involved in our education systems, we need to focus on improving our school climate. And if we want our children and youth to have the social and emotional skills that they need to succeed in the era of Common Core and to become 21st century learners, then we need to focus on school climate. So, focusing on school climate, it's important to practice what you preach. And what's at the core of improving school climate is building relationships. So today, you're not going to have the opportunity to just kind of sit around and take in all the information we're giving you. We're going to be up talking to each other and building relationships. We'll take a little while to introduce you to some of the research on school climate. So what is the difference that really makes a difference when we're trying to improve school climates? And then lastly, we're going to work in our district teams to start looking at your local data around school climate so you can start to have those conversations with your local teams about what it looks like. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Adrian, who is going to get us started.
Okay, sounds like a plan. I'm going to get used to this clicker as well. I might need some help. Power of 3 up here,
yeah,
right?
There you go.
All right.
Just push it hard.
So speaking of Common Core, so imagine you're a young person, and it's the first day of school. And you are out there, and you are in a classroom, and you're sitting down, and you're listening to the teacher say what she is about to teach or what he's about to teach. And you're looking around you, and you're like, I think I know him. I don't know her. I don't know him. I don't know her. I don't know her. And I don't know her. And that's the first day of school. But let's fast forward a little bit and imagine now that it's right before the Thanksgiving break, and you're that young person who's still saying, I think I know him, I don't know her, I don't know him, and I don't know her. How do we create a climate where young people know each other and are excited about building relationships with each other, ultimately on their way to learning together? So what we want to do right now is that we want to kind of give you that experience of what does it mean to meet people? What does it mean to do what you guys do so well? But what does it feel like to get out of your chair and to talk to the people in this imaginary classroom? So let's give it a shot right now. So I'm asking that you leave your table for this one. It's okay, we promise we'll give you the table back. You'll be able to go back to it, I promise you. But what I want you to do is I want you to make a new friend in this room. Just one, and I want to see everyone in pairs for this. And what I want you to do is introduce yourself, of course, but I also want you to share what's something that your school district does well for your young people. What is something that your school district does well for your young people? I only have 2 minutes to make this happen, so you're going to have to get up really fast and meet someone really fast and answer this question. Yes, this is a bragging session. Feel free to brag, but I want each of you to be able to brag. On your marks, get set, go. You're doing great.
Yeah.
So I hand it check. Okay. Nice job. I hope everyone had a chance to brag a little bit. This is what I want you guys to do right now because you're still talking and I get it. If you can hear me, give your new friend a high five. If you can hear me, give your new friend a high five. Nice. Now, if you can hear me, clap once. Not bad. If you can hear me, clap twice. If you can hear me, clap 3 times. And all eyes on me. So, once again, you might be like, we just clapped in here. We're a bunch of superintendents that admitted. I get it. But guess what? If I was in a classroom and I just did that, I would have just been able to get the attention of some amazing young people who were deep in dialogue. Let's keep this conversation going for a little bit. It's just me and this clicker, I know it. So now with your new friend, what I want you to do is I want you to find another pair in the room. Yes, you're going to meet more people in this room now. And what I want you to do is quickly introduce yourselves, but what's something positive that shaped you as a young person? Go back down memory lane 2 weeks ago. What's something that shaped you as a young person, right? I want each of you to be able to share, but I'm only giving you 2 minutes for this round, so please be fast with your thoughts. Groups of 4 now, go. If you don't have, oh, that's not working. Oh, they're good. They're good. So I'm going to show the data.
sorry, you had the camera. Okay, I think we've got you. Yeah, we can say, yeah, yeah.
Take one more minute if you need it. One more minute. Take another 20 seconds if you need it. 20 seconds. Okay. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, just let's make the room snap like this. If you can hear me now, give a high five to the 3 people you just spoke to and go back to your chairs. Thank you. Welcome back. I know it's really hard to say goodbye to the people you just met. You just built some awesome relationships. But trust me, we are quickly losing time, so I need everyone back at their table, and we'll get going with some of the research in just a minute. Thank you. I remember the first time I went to a conference, and it was / a leadership retreat, and they said, we promise you great networking. And it was 2 days together, and not once did I do what we did in here, and not once was I able to meet the people in the room. So I always promised myself that if we were going to be part of this, that we'll insert moments like this. And what better day than today to talk about school climate and school engagement. Now, what we just did right now might seem touchy-feely, but trust me on this one, and the research is validating this more than ever. Not only is it touchy-feely, I'll go there with you, but what if I told you that it's also necessary? What if I told you that our young people need to be engaged more than ever before? Gallup said this, they concluded this in looking at school engagement. They said, American education does not suffer from an achievement gap inasmuch as it suffers from an engagement gap. I'll say it one more time. American education does not suffer from an achievement gap inasmuch as it suffers from an engagement gap. We're losing our young people because we're not engaging them. Young people, more than ever, are questioning whether or not the education that they are receiving will transition them into adulthood effectively. Now, trust me, and I hope they trust me on this as well, they're better off with an education than they're not, right? We get that. But let's look at what Gallup also looked at. They looked at what they're calling the student engagement cliff. And what they're saying is, in elementary, imagine we had 10 elementary high school students up here standing up. And I said, how many of you actually feel that you're engaged in school? 8 of them would raise up their hand. 2 of them wouldn't. Now imagine that I had 10 middle schoolers up here. And I asked the same question. How many of you feel that you're engaged in school? Meaning that you are emotionally and rationally connected to what you're learning. Well, this time, we would only get about 6 middle schoolers that would raise up their hand. And by the time we get to high school, imagine we had 10 high schoolers up here. By the time we get to high school, only 4 of our wonderful high school students would raise up their hand and say, I'm engaged at school. By the way, they don't need to leave their chair to show you that they're not engaged. They can be sitting in it all day long and not be engaged. like some of you might be right now. I hope not. So here's some interesting evidence, right? Here's some interesting research for us to consider. This is what I want you to do. With your table now, because of time, with your table, how does this data match with your own schools in Monterey County? And what do you think causes this decline? So go ahead and have this conversation at your table. I'm only going to give you 4 minutes because of time. I'm very interested to see what you come up with. I'll see you in 4. Thank you. So that's good. When I'm sitting at a table, I just feel so, I don't know what it is, and I have to go check myself in or something. Are you the same way or are you not? Is it just me? Needing to walk around. Oh no, meaning like during like one-on-ones with new people, I'm not okay. But I don't care if there's a million people and I'm okay. I'm fine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I get that.
It's just weird. It might be my top 5 kicking, I don't know.
Well, it's even, for me, it's the same thing, like, as an instructor, I'd rather instruct to 60 people than to 10, because 60 eyes on you is somehow less overwhelming than 10. It's bizarre, but
They have to get ready for the breakout, so they're going to step out.
So, I'll see you in 2 minutes.
Kick it back. Yeah. All right, we've got 1 minute, 1 minute. All right, if you can hear me, put your hand in the air, give me a power to the people. Put your hand in the air and give me a power to the people. All right. So, is this, got it? Great. All right, so hopefully now we've taken some time to really start to think about some of these critical components of school climate. And when we're talking about improving school climate, what's at the core of all of this is building relationships. So I want to just give you a quick sort of definition from the National School Climate Council, which says that school climate is the quality and character of school life that's based on the patterns of people's experiences when they're at school, which is driven by the norms, goals, and values of that school. So when we talk about norms, goals, and values, those are all kind of like very large nebulous topics, right? And we know that there's no single program that you're going to come in and plop down on a school that's going to change the norms, goals, and values, right? Norms, goals, and values, those are things that are communicated through the everyday experiences and interactions that students and staff have on campus. And it's also communicated implicitly and explicitly through the policies, programs, and practices at that district. So when we have these big definitions, that definitely makes us wonder, well, what do we do, right? Where do we intervene, and how do we get started? So that's when we start to look at some of the research that's been done on building child and youth resiliency and how that links to school climate. So if we want to improve our school climate, there's 3 things that we need to focus on, and the research has confirmed this over the past 2 decades. And those 3 things are caring relationships, high expectations, and opportunities for meaningful participation. And when children and youth experience these 3 critical things in their school, in their home, amongst their peers, and in their community, we know that these are the things that help children and youth develop the social and emotional skills that they need to navigate difficult situations. It helps them develop social and emotionally so when they encounter adversity, they're able to bounce back, right? Because we all know throughout life, your ability to bounce back when you encounter adversity or if you're born into adverse circumstances is really what helps to define successful and unsuccessful children and youth. So what does it take? If we were really going to sort of shift our norms and values and really embrace this idea of building resilient children and youth, what would that shift look like? Well, first off, we'd shift from focusing on problems. Now, if we look at all of the federal policies, basically all of the major federal policies that have focused on children and youth, they generally have this idea that kids are out there, there's a problem, so we need to go in and fix the problem, right? And what's the problem? Well, the kid itself, the kid, him or herself. And the sort of, the kind of flagship of this idea of focusing on problems is the Just Say No campaign, right? We come up with, oh, a lot of kids are having trouble saying no to drugs, so if we tell them to just say no, we'll fix the kids, problem solved, without attending to any of the structures and systems that have put that situation in place in the first place. So instead of focusing on problems, we want to shift to think about what are the strengths that children and young people have at each and every one of their developmental stages, and how do we engineer programs that help to build those strengths. Instead of seeing children and youth as recipients of services, we see children and youth as resources, right? So nobody knows better about what it's like to be a child or a young person today than young people themselves. And just like former Superintendent O'Connell said, the most valuable insights and wisdoms you'll get about improving your school climate come from the young people themselves, right? Things you would have never imagined. Instead of assigning blame, so saying, oh, if we just had more funding, or oh, if the teachers could just teach better, we all claim a collective responsibility for all our children and young people, and we see that we all have a role in becoming part of the solution. And instead of relying on professionals, again, we'd see everybody has a role. So we would say that includes your administrative staff, your custodial staff, your sports coaches, your bus drivers, your parents, your community at large, right? Everybody has a role in creating a solution. And instead of focusing on short-term interventions, we think about long-term supports, right? We think about what at each developmental stage do young people need to reach their full potential. And so when we think about long-term supports, again, to echo what Jack O'Connell was saying, we have to remember that this starts early, right? Our research tells us that 90 or 85% of brain development happens between the prenatal stage and 3rd grade, right? That's when young people's brains are growing the most, and that's when those positive learning environments and positive experiences really matter. Just a quick introduction. Inside of your folders, there's an invitation to come to an early childhood development initiative. So we'll be starting to talk about having conversations about how to get kids ready for kindergarten and how to make sure they're reading on grade level by 3rd grade. So please make sure you take a look at that. And then the last slide I want to show you, just to sort of emphasize the really powerful, the real power behind developing assets and developing our school climates. This is research that just came out in 2012. An organization called WestEd, they looked at all of the public schools in California. And the question they asked was, what was the difference that made a real difference for schools that were, quote unquote, beating the odds? So schools that, despite the fact, had high levels of violence, or schools that maybe were under-resourced, the schools that were able to beat the odds, so overcome challenges and succeed despite their circumstances, had high school climate indices, or high levels of caring relationships, opportunities for meaningful participation, and high expectations. So we've seen the sort of critical power that these assets can have for changing school communities for the better for all children and youth. And so what we want to do next is take a look at some of our data here in Monterey County. So I'm going to hand it over to Carrie, who is going to go ahead and become our game show facilitator.
Okay, so show of hands, how many of you know what CHKS stands for? Okay, in a world of acronyms, right? California Healthy Schools, or Healthy Kids Survey. As superintendents and school board members, what's more important, looking at your California Healthy Kids Survey data, or looking at your adequate yearly progress data? Most would probably say adequate yearly progress, or maybe you'd say both, but which one do you spend more time focusing on? AYP, right? I'm here to tell you that it's absolutely critical to spend probably more time, or at least equally as much time, on your California Healthy Kids Survey data, because without a positive culture and climate, your AYP is not going to improve the way that you would like it to. And so let's look at some of your countywide data. Okay, category 1, caring relationships. And so Ashley had talked about the 3 important things to have to build resiliency: caring relationships, high expectations, and meaningful opportunities to participate. So what percentage of students reported a high level of caring relationships at school? And this is countywide, so take a moment to think about it. 21%, 31%, 46%, or 68%?
I do show of hands.
Okay, with a show of hands, how many think it's A, 21%? B, 31%? C, 46%? And D, 68%? Okay, I think maybe some of you did look at your data. The correct answer is B, 31%. Okay, which means that 69% of our students in Monterey County do not feel they have caring relationships at school. Okay, round number 2. Okay, high expectations. How many students reported a high level of being held to high expectations at school? A, 19%, B, 30%, C, 46%, or D, 65%? If you think it's A, B, C, or D? Okay, and the answer is C, 46%. 54% therefore do not feel like they're being held to high expectations. So round 3, last round. Meaningful participation. What percentage of students reported a high level of meaningful opportunities to participate at school? If you think it's A, 12%, raise your hand. B, 29%. C, 44%. Or D, 64%? The answer is A. Ouch. So I want you to, how many people here are gardeners? Spend some time outside, okay? And as gardeners, you would probably say that the most important thing to ensuring growth of plants, flowers, whatever, is what? The health of what? The soil, right? So in schools, you need to think of your climate as the soil. If I go to the greatest gardening store, and I am not a gardener, and I bought the most expensive seed, and I planted it in toxic soil, what's going to happen? It's going to die. If I go to the dollar store and pick up a seed off the shelf, and I plant it in healthy soil, what's going to happen? Okay? If you do not build a foundation and cultivate the soil, any good initiative that you attempt to implement in your school will die. because the students do not have the supports and opportunities that they need to be successful, nor do the teachers. And again, it's this idea that it's not the teacher's fault, it's not the kids' fault, it's not the administrator's fault. You can't have a healthy teaching staff and a toxic administration. If we're toxic, everybody's toxic. And we need to own it and then move forward to fix the issues.
So I promised you that we would talk about 5 critical elements to a positive school climate and how to engage our young people. And we'll do that right now. And what I want to do, and I'm surrounded by greatness right now. And I told them, this is so not you guys being my Vanna White. So please, no one take that. But we want to go 3-dimensional as well. So let's look at this really fast. Raise up your hand if safety is important to you, if you need it in your life. Awesome. I'm really glad to see that. Let me break this down a little bit. When we think about safety amongst our students and amongst ourselves, absolutely, physical safety, right? That they're not going to trip and fall, that they're not going to get hurt, that there's proper lighting. We get that. That's important. The other thing, though, is what about emotional safety? What about I'm not scared to raise up my hand? And what about cultural safety? What about being free to be who you are, regardless of faith, gender, sexual orientation, on and on and on? How do we create the conditions for safety? By the way, everything that the 3 of us have talked about up to this point, no one in here saying, oh, wow, new revolutionary information, thank you. But what I hope you are saying is, oh, wow, game show, we get that stuff, we're just not optimizing it. What we talked about earlier, those are not the percentages we want, right? We want stronger percentages or higher percentages. Let me keep going here in terms of the conditions. It's going to get really tall here, so I'm looking forward to seeing what you're going to do there. The second one is this, relationship building. Really simple. It means that our young people like their teachers and the adults in the building, that the adults and teachers in the building like their young people, and that the young people have positive relationships amongst themselves. One of the greatest studies I've seen looking at the power of relationship building in school happened from the good state of Michigan. They took 3,000 teachers and 10,000 students to a summer camp, and all they did was build relationships with them. By the way, those teachers and students were the same teachers and students that were going to be paired throughout the rest of the school year. And they also looked at a neutral trial. What I mean by that is they went ahead and they did not do that with another group of young people, and they followed them as well. Here's what they found out. Because this group built amazing relationships with the teachers from their school, they had stronger attendance rates, lower suspension rates, and a higher GPA by a whole grade level. If you want to look at that research, I highly recommend a book written by Gary Gordon called Building Engaged Schools. It's an amazing book, and you'll find that piece of research in there. Again, you're like, this is touchy-feely stuff. No, you have to understand, to a young person's mind, and if we're youth at the center, we care about a young person's mind. To a young person, relationship building is everything. Raise up your hand if when you were a young person, you did better for the teachers you liked. Point taken. I mean, this isn't rocket science, it's just human nature, right? It's how we go about our business. It is really difficult to work with teachers that we don't like or teachers that don't understand us or get us. I get that. Let me keep going though, and here's where it gets really interesting for us. If we can do these 2 things well, support, safety, and the support of relationship building, then we can do some, what I would like to consider, here's where the magic happens, here's where great things take off. Young people start seeing themselves as a resource on campus. They start saying, hey, how can I be part of leadership? How can I do these things? How can I be involved in those things? Hey, I heard that your teachers are going to get together and decide what curriculum they're going to purchase. Do you think maybe I could be a part of that? Interesting, right? What would happen if our young people took place in those things? Young people, what was that number again? It was pretty low, right, in terms of meaningful participation? 12%. There are things we can do starting tomorrow to increase that number if we really paid attention to it. Let's keep going here. Looking at community involvement. How do we connect the curriculum to the world that they live in. That's why I'm such a big fan of service learning, because young people are like, okay, I totally thought I knew geometry, but now that I'm out there building a house with Hands for Hope or anyone else who's doing that in the community, I really get it now. And I get the worth of what I just learned in the classroom because I'm seeing it present in my community. Last but not least, that the skills that we give them are relevant to their 21st century. About 15 minutes ago, I told you that young people are questioning more than ever if the skills that they are getting are matching their future. So how do we give them the skills that they need to do amazing work in the 21st century? That's a tough one. By the way, this was about 2 months ago. I'm in Sacramento, and I'm in a room much like this, and we're with business leaders and educators, and a business leader raises up his hand, and he goes, I love what you guys are talking about. Now, it wasn't me up here talking. I was just in the room that day. He said, but here's what I need to get off my chest right now. And he goes, if I had one thing to say to all of the educators in the room, I would say this. And so by now, he has everyone's attention in the room, right? He goes, I need you guys to understand something. Stop giving me professional test takers. I need young people who can create. I need young people who can problem solve. I need young people who can tell me what's around the corner when I can't see it. And the room got as quiet as it is right now. How do we connect our young people to the 21st century through the curriculum that we have? When people said that, what was said earlier, we have a huge calling. This is a tough one. We don't even know what the next 15 years is going to look like, and we have to match what we're teaching them to that. Pretty fascinating. The last thing I will say about this before we close out is if you look at these 5 supports and opportunities, I really think it's important to talk about the young people that we don't see every day in school. And I want to talk about those young people who are highly marginalized. I want to talk about those young people who are probably gang affiliated, whether they're Norteño or Sureño, Blood, Crip, you name the gang. When you sit down with those young people and you ask them, why did you join the gang? They have my back. That's the language they use. And I'll use their language right now so you know exactly what they're saying. They have my back. When you ask them, and can we do this right here? I thought you guys were saving it for like a magical moment. Here's your magical moment. Here's your magical moment right here. Power of 3, power of 3. When you ask young people, when you ask young people who have recently joined a gang, why'd you join a gang? They will tell you, they're my brothers, they're my sisters, they're my fellow soldiers. And when you ask them, why else did you join a gang? And they will tell you that their roles and responsibilities in that gang are serious to them. And when you ask them, what are they protecting? They tell you, my block, my hood, my set, mi barrio. They tell you these things. And when you ask a young person who's gang affiliated the skills that they're getting, it'll freak you out. It'll freak you out. So here's the thing. Our young people are looking for this no matter what. Are we going to give it to them, or is someone else going to give it to them? It's that simple, right? Now, I know that the people in this room care about the education of our young people. And what I want you guys to know is this, that in order to look at the quality of the curriculum we give them, we also need to look at the quality of the climate. I don't know what happened in the last 20 years. I just don't. I can't tell you. I have no idea. But in education, let's use a chess analogy really fast. In education, the king is curriculum. And it should be. We are in the business of educating our young people. But I don't know what happened. And I don't want to say it happened everywhere. But I can tell you in the region where I'm from, it did happen. We somehow took the queen off the chessboard and tried to win the game. What we're saying now is Common Core and other things, and what Carrie is going to talk about in her workshop, how her API score went through the roof as soon as she put the queen back onto the chessboard, is this. The queen represents climate. And in order to win for our young people, in order to give them what we want, in order for them to succeed in their future, we need to set up the conditions where the king and the queen can play together. Does that make sense? Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your energy. I was going to hand it over to
Yeah, I will,
Ashley.
yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. So we are running a little bit behind schedule. We were hoping to have some time for group work at the end of this so we could really start. If you look on your tables, we provided you with a conversation starter that you can have amongst your school board members in your community. But what we would love for everyone to do, and hopefully what you see the value in doing, is starting to bring some of this back and having the conversation, right? Having the conversation with your youth, having the conversation with your parents, having the conversation with your board members that aren't here in the room together. So we wanted to provide you with some resources to help structure that conversation. So what you see on your table is a chart that you can use to help kind of reflect on what are the strengths that your districts have already, because we know that some of this work is already going on. We've got districts that have made wonderful grounds in doing positive behavioral interventions to support our children and young people, or have amazing collaborative relationships with their community. So we want to start from that strength-based approach, right? What's going well? What strengths do we have? And then the next step we want to take is thinking about, well, where could we improve, right? What is the change that we want to see happen? And then the last column says, how? So what strategies do we want to use to try to make some of these changes? And now what's important too is that you all have data that reflects your youth and your community. And part of what we did with our All Kids Our Kids initiative was to encourage districts to add on a resiliency and youth development module, which measures caring relationships, opportunities for meaningful participation, and high expectations in 4 different contexts. So you'll get an idea what that looks like in the home, amongst their peers, in their school, and in their community, if your district did that survey and administered that. So each of you have a folder that has either your own community's data in it, if you took the survey yourself. If you didn't take the survey yourself, you can use the countywide data, which will be in the folder that's been provided to you as well, which will give you just sort of an idea about what things are looking like on a countywide scale, and you can kind of use that to sort of gauge where you are. So we hope that these tools will help kind of give you the information you need to start having the conversation, because in this era of education reform, things are shifting beneath our feet, and we need a new set of priorities to help us improve our school climate, improve student engagement, and we need the data to be able to do that. So hopefully in this time we can start thinking of new ideas and new ways to measure them, and the resources you have in your folder will really help you start to have that conversation. So we'd like to thank you so much for your attention. We do have a breakout session here immediately following this session where Carrie's going to talk about the real nuts and bolts of sort of what does it actually look like to do this in a school, because you can stand up here and talk about all these great ideas and it gets really hard and complicated when you try to make change on the ground. So Carrie's going to talk about her experience at Pioneer High School in Woodland, which is very similar to our schools here in Monterey County. And Adrian's also going to talk a little bit about what this means for elementary schools as well. So if you're interested in joining us and continuing the conversation, we definitely invite you to.
Let's give a big round of applause. Thank you so much for focusing on what's so vital. What I would like to say is that all of your school districts have the opportunity to administer the Healthy Kids Survey, that module that gets in at these 3 things: caring relationships, high expectations, opportunities for participation, at grades 5, 7, 9, and 11. You can get those results back, and you can unpack this with your students at the local school level, each school. So it's very specific. Those figures that were put up here were county-wide, and people say, oh, not my school, not our kids. But when you get your data back, you will be able to really engage your community and then start addressing these issues. So I encourage you all to go back and have a conversation of whether or not you are participating in the Healthy Kids Survey, and if you are you administering the module that will give you these data? And if you have the data, what are you going to do with it? So that's kind of the challenge of it, and you'll go deeper in the next session if you want to stay right here in the ballroom. Now, for everybody that's not going to stay in this session, there's 2 other outstanding opportunities. We would like all of the new board members to attend the new board member training with Lou Lozano downstairs. So it's the room is downstairs for all new school board members. That's the one we'd like you all to go to if you are new to the board. Then also right next door is a phenomenal experience that we just are hoping you will take advantage of. And that is effective and engaging district-wide long-range planning process. Washington Union School District has been doing this work for the past 20+ years, and they have created a planning process that goes from engages the entire community, and I'm talking about kids surveys, parents surveys, the community being involved throughout the year in defining their goals, setting their direction. It's powerful, the tools and materials that they're going to share, and I hope every board has some people attending that session to bring back that information to factor into your process in your district. But it will really help you as you engage in this new work of local flexibility and developing of your local plans. I'm sure you will get something to take back from that work. I attended with Deneen the parent meeting and the whole community meeting at dinner last in the spring, where that entire community finalized their plan. It sets the direction for the evaluation of the superintendent right on through the system, up and down, and it's their direction for the year. So if you'd like to get those tools, please take advantage of that. So there's 3 outstanding presentations now for you to choose from. I hope you'll divide your board up and be sure you hit on all of them. And then we'll take a break now for 10 minutes. And what we'll do is we will have the restrooms are off to the right here, around the corner of the reception desk, and we will start promptly.